Good day, fellow rockers and moshers. Welcome to the Metal Connection, the connection to all things metal. I'm J-Dub, and today on the show we are doing a grandiose Norse edition of our three favorite Amon Amarth albums. So as you can see, we got some guests here, so we're gonna get it all hashed out and get everyone's top three favorite Amon Amarth albums. So we'll kind of get this thing going here, and I think maybe I'll just volunteer myself to go first for whatever odd reason. And it's funny, before the show, we had a little bit of pre-chatter there, and someone was like, "Oh, I wish I had the drinking horns," and so then I went and got my drinking horn, and then Matt's all dressed up in his drinking horn, so we're all decked out in our shit. And then I got an Amon Amarth. Well, I was gonna wear this, but I realized if I wore it, no one would be able to see the back of it. But since I am talking a little busted out here, so yeah, I got my little.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna wear it, and I'm like, well, if I wear it, no one will be able to see the back. So I was like, so I was trying to hang it up before the show here, but you can't really see it. So we're all decked out in our Amon Amarth gear here, but. I will go first, and I'm going to show all my three favorites in a row, not in a row, sort of thing. And if anyone needs to chime in between after, I'll try to go slow or whatever. But for my third favorite, we'll call it, this is the album that I discovered Amon Amarth with around. It was around 2002-ish, so around 2002, Versus the World came out, and I really love this album. It has this really unique, almost like you're like frolicking in the woods, like mix and production to it. Like, it's winter here in Canada, so it almost seems like, like a gang of friends are just frolicking around in the woods, and it has that production and feel and vibe to it. It's very unique. It's very unique. I know Amon Amarth, some of these early albums, they have these really cool mixes and mastering and sounds to them that it's just very unique to, well, the Viking metal and things like that. So Versus the World is my third for sure. Maybe there is a bit of nostalgia there, as I did mention. It's the album that I kind of discovered them on, and at this point, I think we're all here. We clearly all love Amon Amarth in some sort of fashion. So I think we probably could be throwing in any album at this point. But this is my number three. Next up, this one's probably I might be the only one actually picking this one next. But I don't know, when this album came out recently, I really connected with all the songs, and in fact, pretty much the whole album. And I actually think this album is like their masterpiece. Like, I know they have great albums, but like, I think from top to bottom, they just put it all together. Just a complete masterful album, and the artwork is great. So my next choice is Jom's Viking, and yeah, it's probably a bit of a shocker, a bit of a surprise to some of you, but yeah, I don't know. I just really connected with this album. I just think it's a complete masterpiece. Like sure, there might be better albums, like maybe for songs wise, but I think top to bottom, this is actually one of the most complete Amon Amarth albums. I don't know. Maybe we'll get that discussion going on, but later on, just depending on if no one else picks it or not, I have no idea. But yeah, I guess I'll have to find out if someone else will pick it or not.
You do realize, Jamie, it is a concept album. It all is one story.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, the Jom's Viking character. Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that, like, if I had to pick my least favorite song, there's kind of like a duet with Doro Pesh. I love Doro, but it is kind of one of the probably the only non-catchy song, and the rest of the songs are just so great. And I love all the music videos. When the album was getting released, they released a bunch of music videos with the songs, and they were just all great. And I just got so into this album, and yeah. And yeah, it does feel weird not to do the, show one on to the next person, show one on the next. It is a little bit weird doing all three in a row. So here we are with my number one, which is weird. Like, I just started the show and I'm already doing my number one. So it is a little strange, but My number one is I obviously would have discovered Amon Amarth in around 2001, 2002 when Versus the World came out, and so I had to go back and discover some of their earlier albums and learn some of the earlier albums, and still to this day, uh, the Avenger is my number one favorite. And yeah, again, these early Monomarth albums have these really cool mixes and productions to them where they just like they're so raw, but they yeah. But and then anyway, so like Versus the World kind of has like this frolicking out in the woods vibe atmosphere to it. This one has like I don't know. I always say it has like a hallway sound. It almost sounds like it was kind of recorded in a hallway, not in a bad way, just in a really unique way. I don't know if anyone else kind of gets the vibes for some of these early ones, but yeah, it just has this very like raw, unique mix and master to it, and I've always been drawn to it, and I still love it. It just gives off a really cool vibe, and yeah, this is like super really cool death metal. Sure, Monomarth kind of veered more into melodic death metal as we kind of progressed. They kind of turned well, they always were melodic, but this one is very dark and very more on the death metal side. Almost like there is some blackish vibes, dare I even say that at times, with just like with the mix and mastering, it just gives it a really dark vibe, and I've always been drawn to just how great this album is. I love it.
That Avenger's not on my list, Jamie, but the song Metal Wrath is one of the heaviest songs like anywhere. I mean, whenever I'm putting together a mix or a playlist of something that's just face ripping heavy metal, that song always makes it in. And I think it's because those early Amon Amarth albums, two of which show up on your list, they have a strong thrash element to them. And I think Avenger's the most kind of death metal, thrash metal, probably their most aggressive album. And it's their second album.
Yeah, it is super aggressive. Actually, I didn't even listen to it kind of in the lead up just because I've played it to death ever since it did came out, sort of thing. Ever since I discovered it, last 20 years, sort of thing. So I didn't really need to play it. I kind of know it off by heart, sort of thing. But yeah, I don't even know how to describe the mix and master on it. It's just like to me, it has like this hallway sound, like in a good way. I don't even know if that's describing it properly, but yeah, it just kind of adds to the really darkness and heaviness to it. But there's my three favorites, and I'm kind of excited to see. It's weird because Amon Amarth doesn't have like a hit album per se, not like Metallica the Black Album or like a hit album, right? So I don't actually know what people's favorite albums are. So actually, this is actually the most curious thing about doing a show is what are people's favorite Amon Amarth albums? I have no idea because mine's Avenger. I like you said, like Matt, you chimed in and said Avenger's not even on your list. So it's like to me, I have actually no idea what are the popular Amon Amarth albums. I don't know. We're gonna figure it out, I guess. And I don't know. I don't know if I would just follow going around with who's beside me, Matt's beside me, or if anyone else wants to volunteer to go first. Or
I'm happy to jump in.
Sure, yeah. We'll just do this little circle then. So yeah, if you want to go next, Matt.
Sounds good. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm a huge Amon Amarth fan. They're my favorite band by a lot. They were the band that when I first heard them, I was like, oh, this is the band that suits who I am inside. When I take my normal suit off and I think of myself as like an authentic person, Amon Amarth is the soundtrack that's playing in the back. And they are, for me, they're everything that I'm looking for in metal is found in Amon Amarth. I mean, obviously, I love the theme. I think of myself as someone born out of time. I listen to, all the Viking stories. They all make sense. I love the honor culture. But even just their music, how brutal their vocals are, but still comprehensible, how they're heavy, but still catchy. I love melodic death metal, and I think Amon Amarth is probably the best for me. And they they don't fit the typical Viking metal tropes where it ends up trending into the black. It ends up in a sort of dark Norwegian forest playing all their music on bones. You know, they still sound like rock and roll, but heavy, heavy, heavy metal too. So choosing top three, I tortured myself all day. I like talked to my family for, you know, hours and pissed them all off because I was like, it's like trying to pick your favorite kid out of your 10 favorite kids. You know, it's like you had 10 kids, all of them are doing awesome, and I've got to pick the 3 kids I like the best. So I just wanted to preface my 3 favorites with, if I had to pick my 10 favorite albums of all time, 5 of them would be Amon and Amarth albums. So that makes this like really torturous for me. And I have like a whole list of honorable mentions, which are just single songs. So like this year they released a remastered, re-recorded Masters of War. And it's just phenomenal. It's so heavy. It's so good. It sounds like them now, but it's also them, the writing that they did years ago. So, you know, I've got all these different honorable mentions. So I had to break it down to 3 because I know that J-Dub likes to run a tight show. So here we go. And the order again is super tricky because if I had to go by quality, you know, I would pick every Amon and Amarth album, just say, fuck it. You know, like for me, the quality is absolutely top notch. I love them all. So I had to change my ranking criteria. I changed it to important to me, basically. So my third, and an album I just keep coming back to because it's just ferocious, is Odin on Our Side. This is their 2006 album. It's right before things started to blow up for them, right before they started touring every couple of years. This is a ripper. I mean, a song that I don't listen to much, but when they play it live is unbelievable as Azator. My second favorite Amon and Amarth song is on this album, which is Gods of War Arise. I think Gods of War Arise is just a absolutely crushing song. I've seen Amon and Amarth 15 times, and
Nice.
almost every song from this album's been played at one point or another. Yeah, this one's huge for me. Odin on Our Side.
I don't know if you're going to go. Your next one is going to chime in and say, "I really love Cry the Blackbirds." Wow, that's a great song.
Big time. Yeah, totally agree. Runes to My Memory, also a great song. Yeah, just love them all. My next pick, okay, so 1 and 2, really struggling here. So we're gonna go, if I'm going by what's important to me, my number 2 pick is the same as you, Jamie, which is Jomsviking.
Wow.
I love Jomsviking. I think Jomsviking as an album, I agree with you. That's their strongest album. They front to back, it's great. The duet is the weak point, agreed, but it works with the story. So the concept album, which Clint brought up, it, in my opinion, nice, saves this. There we go. Saves that that song, which is still a good song, but it's not as catchy as all the others. But they did a contest for the video for Raise Your Horns, and my daughter and I submitted a video of us singing it together. She's 6, and we show up in that video. That's a fan video. There's like 500 people in that video in little clips. It's super cool. And when I heard Raise Your Horns, I was like, okay, you know, Amon and Amarth has made this album. It's a concept album. It's brilliant. And then in the middle of it, they have this song that is kind of their Run to the Hills. It's the song they're going to have to play every time they play a concert. It's the song people are going to sing along to. You know, it's so good live. It's so cohesive. That one's fun. First Kill, super heavy. Dawn's First Light, if you want to see an awesome Viking video, watch Dawn's First Light, and then right after you're done watching Dawn's First Light, watch Shield Wall from Berserker. those two videos back to back, I mean, it's as good as any Viking show that's ever been made. So Dawn's First Light, awesome. And then my personal favorite song off the album's a Weirdo, which is The Wanderer. It's the second song, and it's Amon and Amarth doing an epic, which they very rarely do. They do a lot of big songs, but like that one's a narrative story. So second pick, Yom's Viking, 2016.
Yeah, I thought this album is just super diverse as well too. Where like they were kind of, I don't know, something about it's like really diverse, but it's just, I don't know, it just seemed like everything came together perfectly. I like nothing seems forced. It just I don't know, everything about it just seems like it came together just perfect.
I listened to their 5 most recent albums back to back, Jamie, and this one's the tightest and punchiest. Like Berserker's rad. I love it. It almost made it the list. It was fighting with Yom's Viking to get on, but Yom's Viking's just so strong, and the story's rad. And I mean, the history of the Yom's Vikings is pretty hardcore too. So I was super stoked on this album, and I saw them a whole whack of times on this tour, and it's phenomenal. Which leaves my first and most favorite Amon Amarth album, which I don't think.
I was gonna say something else too. I'm glad you did mention I'm glad you mentioned the music videos because I did bring up the music videos briefly too for this, but no, even earlier, kind of this morning and this afternoon, I couldn't help myself, and I actually did pull up some of those music videos to this album.
Yeah.
Like you were saying, First Kill, Raise Your Horns. What was the other one?
Dawn's First Light.
Dawn's First Light. Oh yeah, Dawn's First Light. Yeah. Yeah, those are great music videos. I don't know, maybe that just adds to the album and me loving it so much more. But it's just like everything is just, the whole package is just, everything just seems to be perfect with this album. I thought I was going to be the only one picking this album, so I'm actually really glad that someone else heard what I heard, sort of thing. So, and
I'm gonna have to go back.
We'll see if anyone else picked it or not. But I was thinking I'm going to be the only one picking that, and they're all going to go classic kind of thing. But that's what we're here for, to see what are the most popular ones, sort of thing.
Totally. Clint, you were saying something?
I said I'm definitely gonna have to go back and listen to that album again. I mean, I did go back and listen to some older stuff today. We'll get into that discussion here in a little bit, but yeah, I'm gonna have to definitely go back and listen to it.
Yeah. I would watch the video to Dawn's First Light and then listen to the album. It's so rad. Like, you're just in it. You're like, yeah, let's do this. It really does make me want to like sail down the coast and burn down the next town. Yeah. So, and then so yeah, that brings me to my first pick. So when I think of Amon Amarth, I sort of think of their albums in either the historical albums or the mythological albums. So like for me, the historical albums are like Yom's Viking, Berserker, Odin on Our Side, that kind of stuff. And then the mythological albums are obviously, Deceiver, Suture, all of those sort of versus the world, the kind of more like about the stories and the mythology of the Vikings. And in my opinion, the best mythological album and the one that introduced me to Amon Amarth, and my number one pick is Twilight of the Thunder God. I think Twilight's the one that blew them up. They started touring all the time after Twilight. I saw them at the Croatian Cultural Center for Twilight, and it was like a really, really big gymnasium, and they tore that place apart. I mean, the mosh pit was wall to wall. I felt such a strong sense of identification with the music when I heard it that I was, they played Guardians of Asgard to finish the show, and it was just absolutely crushing. And to me, Twilight it's the most impactful metal album I've ever heard, for me personally. My wife knows, my daughter knows that when I die and they push me out into the sound in a burning boat, they'll play Free Will Sacrifice. That'll be the song that ends my story. So yeah, for me, there's nothing more meaningful than Twilight of the Thunder God, and I love it still.
Hell yeah, Matt. Hell
Yeah,
yeah.
I did actually listen to this probably a couple hours ago or before the show because I was just going to see if my ranking, I was going to see if I could convince myself to switch my order up, to switch something out. And no, I didn't, like, obviously it's good, but I don't even know if it would crack my top five. But nonetheless, obviously every Amarth is consistent in some sort of fashion, so it's great. But yeah, I am surprised that it is your number one, but yeah, it's obviously great.
And
And
that's what makes this list fun, Jamie, because you've got 10 albums and they're all freaking awesome. So we get to respectfully disagree.
yeah, well, I could say like if I didn't like it, I wouldn't own it. I don't buy albums I don't like, so obviously I own it. I like it. So
yeah, we were playing Twilight of the Thunder God, in the hospital room while my daughter was born. I mean, It was like super intense and yeah, if you guys want me to cry on the show, I'll just keep going. So we'll keep rocking.
Nice.
I was gonna ask you guys this before the show started, but I was gonna actually probably put you on the spot. I was gonna have some questions for everyone, but maybe we'll just be the first one. My two questions I was gonna ask everyone was what was your first Amon Amarth album, which you've already answered and I answered. So when everyone else, maybe you'll just say the first one that you discovered. And then my second one was going to be out of your three that you picked, what is your favorite album cover out of the three you picked?
Good question. It's funny, you could almost make album cover an independent thing. It's in many interviews, Amon and Amarth has said that their least favorite album cover and the one that they're constantly embarrassed by is the Crusher. Like pretty much all the members of the band think that album cover is utter garbage, which always makes me laugh. But I mean, since then they've outdone themselves in the album cover department. I mean, the art direction on the last 5 albums is absolutely staggering. Like probably their weakest album cover is Odin on My Side, which is very sort of
it's cool.
It's like
it's almost like an Egyptian vibe.
Well, yeah, it's the Volknut with Odin and Sleipnir on the front, but I mean, it looks like a graphic designer put it together, like you'd expect someone who just got into Amon Amarth to be like, that's what I'll get for a tattoo. It's like, no, like, come on. The other albums, I mean, starting at Twilight, the album covers are so rad and they get out of hand. Both Jomsviking and Berserker have that kind of hulking, muscular Viking on the front. Deceiver and Suture are those like really cool mythological paintings. But I think for me the cover of Twilight is just such a like, I keep looking at it. I keep noticing more and more things, like the runes in Mjolnir and Jormungandr shows up in their live shows. Like if they've got a big enough venue, they'll roll that Jormungandr out, and it's just like, it just kicks ass. So yeah, I'd say, I mean, Twilight is probably if you're going with the mythological albums, I love that cover.
Yeah.
And yeah, even to digress, I think my favorite album cover out of the three that I chose would be the Jomsviking character. I really love this character, and I love all the blues actually because it's quite different. Because a lot of them are like kind of reddish and black, like reddish. Yeah, a lot of them are kind of reddish. I guess Deceiver the God has some blue on it, but I guess a lot of them actually have like fire, right? If you notice the trend, kind of like reddish fire, right? A lot of them have like a reddish fire. Even Fate of the Norms has like kind of a reddish tinge, right? So they all have like this kind of reddish tinge. So I love the blue is kind of a totally kind of a change.
Well, and the merchandising for Jomsviking was fantastic. I mean, they kind of moved away from the more like mass marketing Viking helmets with horns and shit, and they went to like all the merch for Jomsviking was like proper bearded axes, really cool old Elder Futhark runes. All the shirts were badass. Like it's probably the album with the best shirts. So yeah, I mean, yeah, the merch for Young Striking is just off the hook.
That's cool. I'm glad I remember those questions. I'll try to keep asking those questions if people forget. But yeah, cool. Okay. And then yeah, we'll definitely try to get Matt to chime in as much as possible in between everyone here. So we'll
And
go
so-
next. We'll get next here. We'll go Clint if you want to go up next.
All right. I had a tough choice. Like I got into this band in 2008. It was my senior year in high school. I I was a little late to the game with them, and like I happened to be working with my dad. We were working at Treasures Village, which is like a flea market. We sold movies and stuff like that. And I wandered off and went to go to this guy that that he sells CDs. And around that time, y'all know what album came out at that time, and that's gonna be that was my first introduction. We'll get to that album here in a minute, but my first piece, I had a hard time choosing between these two. With Odin on my side and Deceiver of the Gods, I really, really had a hard time between those two. And I just would have to say they're kind of both kind of even to me personally, because low key, I kind of, like I used to be called Loki was my kind of nickname. You get where low key, yeah. Um,
Little mischievous, Clint.
So,
I was at one point, and I would always kind of pull pranks on people and stuff like that. Or, if there was kind of girl, like there was one time, it was raining outside and I was at school, and like it was kind of like the water was coming off of the building kind of in a stream, kind of looked like a waterfall. And I got like 6 girls and I was like, let's have a wet t-shirt contest. And I told them I'd give them $3 for whoever won. And I just kind of I was a little mischievous and a little trouble. So Loki kind of always kind of resonated with me. Then you find out, like, whenever you go into really researching Loki, he's kind of a dick. He really is. And that album kind of tells you the story of Loki and really kind of goes into detail with it. And like, all his bastard children, like my dog that got stolen, I named her Hella. I was gonna name her Hell, but Hella's actually a little more appropriate for people to pronounce. What kind of name is Hell? People would be like, oh, And I was gonna name my dog Kali. I was gonna name her Freya, but my friend Michael just got his dog and named her Freya. I was like, crap. So that album just really spoke to me. But then my second favorite, I would have to say this kind of went back into their death metal sound, is Sulker Rising. That album to me, it's heavy, it's aggressive, and it does have your typical death metal and black metal kind of guitar riffs in that album. And I didn't even know that was going to be on my list until I went back and listened to it like a few hours ago. And I was like, man, I forgot how heavy that album is. And it's, I've always liked Wolves, and that album, I had like 6 t-shirts for that album kind of cycle. I had a lot, like all the Finrare shirts they had, or Finris, however you want to pronounce it. There was a lot of really cool Wolves. There was a lot of like Thor shirts at that album cycle. There was a tier shirt that was really cool that I got. And just, it was an incredible album, and it just was heavy.
Also, Clint, do you remember that Suture and Deceiver came out really, really close together? Like they feel like companion albums. I'm not surprised that you love them both. I mean, they're so tight, and they came out right together. Like I think Amon and Amarth toured constantly for almost 3 years, and it was on the 2 albums, which is pretty rad.
Yeah.
Yeah, it feels like they were kind of neck and neck. Yeah. But then, my number one album, kind of goes in that same style, and it is Twilight of the Thunder God.
Nice.
Twilight.
You
Oh wow! So
know,
we got Twilight showing up as number one twice here so far.
I mean, to me, every track on that album is like it's their anthem, is how I see it. It's like, you listen to that album and it comes off as like the the story of Thor's fall, it's the and like and I've kind of like since I've kind of like discovered more about Norwegian heritage that I have in myself, if y'all don't know, my last name is Jackson. That ain't my real last name. In the 1950s, I had three brothers that immigrated from Norway, and one of them took the last name Jackson, the other one took the last name Johnson, and the other last name that the guy kept, it was Kalan, was my Norwegian last name. Kind of, yeah, I'm getting on a rant. Sorry. But yeah, Twilight of the Thunder God, just like I was like working with my dad, and I went together that there was a little CD guy, there was a guy selling CDs, and I was like, hey, what's the best you can do? Because he was like $10, $15 for CDs. But I would always go just talk to him, me and him would talk about music. And he would always give me good deals. He'd be like, all right, for you, I don't discount very much because I have to make my money. But for you, since you're cool and you're kind of, younger, and because, I was just like, still kind of a teenager at the point. He was like, all right, I'll take down and I'll sell them for you like $7 a CD if you buy 5 or 10, however many, you buy. So I bought Twilight of the Thunder God. I didn't even know who they were. I just thought the artwork was amazing. I was always in thieves with Norwegian stuff. So I was like, okay, this is cool. I bought it and I bought some other stuff. Can't even remember. I bought like some black metal, some more death metal. I was heavily into death metal at that time. And it just opened my eyes into more like coherent. I was like, wow, this album's just like the title track itself, is so catchy. You hear that kind of guitar riff and it has that bass that gets louder and louder, at the beginning of it. You just want to turn up that radio just that little bit more, and you turn it up maximum and you just want to turn it up even more. And that album to me just is incredible from beginning to end. And I played that CD literally like every day for like a year. And I remember I showed off that album so many times. I was like, people would be like, play something heavy. I'd put that in. I played that CD front to back. I don't know how many times. But yeah, that's why it's number one. And it is the coolest album cover. Minder the detail in Minder looks incredible.
Yeah, Clint, I find it really interesting that all three of your albums are like firmly and deeply in the sort of like mythological section of Amon and Amarth's pantheon. They have those three albums that back to back, it's nothing but mythology. And all three of your favorites happen sequentially, right? Like Twilight, Suture, and then Deceiver are all in a 5-year kind of just an onslaught of Viking mythology. So that's really cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Great albums.
I know.
Thank you.
I did want to chime in when you mentioned Suture Rising as your second. Is if I didn't have nostalgia tied to my Versus the World, because that was the album that I discovered Amon Amarth in. What Amon Amarth was Versus the World. But if I didn't have like nostalgia tied to that, I think Suture Rising easily could have cracked my top 3 because Suture Rising is really great. I think it's probably overall actually better than Versus the World, like for me, but I think just not nostalgia, I had to choose Versus the World in hopes that Suture Rising was going to show up on the show anyway, so it's not like a loss. So I figured Suture Rising was going to show up on the show anyway because it is damn good. I actually, that's probably is one of my three or four favorites anyhow, so I'm glad that did get picked in some fashion tonight.
Yeah, Clint also brought up for me, do you guys remember the marketing for Deceiver of the Gods where they had the like mini movie that went with Father of the Wolf, and then it's like a 15-minute music video that starts with like 7 minutes of just like two guys at a campfire, and then it starts getting weird, and then things get mythological, and then it turns into the music video, which is pretty full on. Yeah, they use a lot of the iconography from those two albums, Deceiver and Suture, in their live shows. So it's pretty cool.
Cool.
Yeah, I still have not seen the band live. I was supposed to several times, and I'm still aggravated at the last one that, the last time I was supposed to see them right before the pandemic hit was like, they were touring, and my band happened to be playing the show that same night. I didn't want to play that show. And then, within a couple of months after that, show, my band ended up breaking up. So I'm like, was like, fuck, I wish I'd have just fucked that show and, wanted to, drove 6 hours to go see them.
It's okay, Clint. I've seen them enough for both of us. We got this. I took my daughter to them the last time they came. So it was her first metal concert ever. I think you saw her there, Jamie.
I think I vaguely remember that. Yeah, well, obviously I'm drinking at all these shows. So
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. I was gonna say I think I've even moshed with you many times when you're wearing that gear with that steel gear, and I'm like, look, I'm surprised you didn't hurt anybody. You were like with the moshing with that.
It's also super strenuous because it weighs 45 pounds. So then you're in a mosh pit with a 45-pound shirt on.
Nice.
It's already and he's getting, so I can imagine that.
Yeah,
Berserker workouts.
Say again, Clint?
Berserker workout.
Yeah, totally. Total berserker workout. But yeah, it was Kaya's first concert. So that's a good piece of personal trivia for her.
Was she scared at the show?
She was a little overwhelmed by how many people there were, but she knows all the words to all the songs. So she was singing along and having a good time. She was 9, so it's a little late for her. But whatever. She's with Dad and a bunch of metalheads. We're all good people.
Right on.
And actually, I will kind of, again, it's not too, I guess not too many people would care, but in Canada, at the last time Amon Amarth came to Canada and did their rounds, they went to Vancouver and they booked a huge kind of mid-size, I don't know, what is a mid-size, like Civic Center arena sort of thing?
It's an arena, Jamie. It's a small arena.
Like, that's quite spectacular for, a death metal band, melodic death metal band, to book a mid-size arena, and it was damn near sold out. Like, I would say there's 3,000, 4,000 people there.
Yeah, I think there's 4,500, and it did sell out. And
that is quite spectacular. 4,000 people for a melodic death metal band, like
in Vancouver.
Like that is almost unheard of, spectacular sort of stuff. Like I have never, that was such a grandiose show. I remember walking in and just like seeing the amount of people that was, coming in, and then there was people in the stands on the side, people in the stands on the side. I'm like, this is incredible.
Well, and Jamie, I went to the show the night before in Seattle, and they booked a pretty big club, and it was rammed, like absolutely rammed. Like you couldn't do anything, you couldn't move. It was so tight. And I was like, God damn, I'm like, this is almost too tight. And then when they came to Vancouver, there was 3 times the number of people there. Like Vancouver was 3 times bigger than the Seattle show. And they were able to do a lot of stuff in the Vancouver show because it was a small arena. They had the full stage, and they could do like, all the right props could come out. Loki could come out and not bang his horns on the ceiling. They could set up the full banners and Jormungand and all that stuff. The Vancouver show ruled.
Oh yeah, that's actually one of my favorite shows ever, like memorable shows ever, just for the grandioseness of it all. Like, yeah, for a melodic death metal band to book a 4,000 seat venue and pretty well fill it, that's just incredible. And then like the previous time they played the Commodore Ballroom can only hold 1,000, 1,500 sort of thing, and they couldn't fit all out stage props and stuff in there. So I was excited to see them in this big kind of open venue where they could fit all that stuff. Just incredible.
Yeah.
Who
I'm
were
not
the
sure.
opening acts?
Oh, that was actually great. It was a At the Gates and Arch Enemy.
Yeah.
Yep, that was the show I was supposed to go to. Yeah, they were playing about 4 hours from where I was at. My friend Joey ended up going to the show, and I think almost that's why that last show my band played, is I kind of think why it failed is because of that, because like a lot of people I knew were going to that show, and they did book of bigger venue. It kind of was an arena, and I just saw like videos of it, and like they had all the props up. I'm like, I'm surprised they didn't film a DVD for that album cycle because of all the stuff they had.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, they probably should have. Or
Pretty
they probably did and have it as a bonus. Maybe I'll have it as a bonus seat, as a bonus like reissue sort of thing on the next CD. Who knows, right?
Yep.
Because they always have a bonus DVD with a lot of these CDs, right? With the bonus show from the previous tours and things like that. Like a lot of these have like double disc, CD DVD set. But yeah, cool stuff. I was gonna say, Jody, did you go to that last Amon Amarth show at that big?
Yeah,
the,
I was there.
oh, you were there. I couldn't remember
Right.
if you were there or not.
Yeah, that was an awesome show. Like you say, they had room for all the props, unlike the Commodore, which was too short, the stage, where they had to cut the Viking horns off the boat. Previous tour.
Nice.
But, yeah, that was killer. It's like they totally upped their game for touring with that tour.
Yeah, it's kind of weird to think that, like, yeah, again, a melodic death metal band is like a household name. Like, it's just very weird. But it's going back to where Matt, where you were saying how they're able to just have this super heavy vibe about them, but then still catchy enough that they could relate to, more, normal people, right? Sort of thing. Like people that may not be super into metal, like they still might like Amon Amarth for certain aspects and things like that.
Also, Jamie, I think a broad range of metalheads, it's acceptable to like Amon Amarth. You know what I mean? So you've got like, you've got Amon Amarth toured with At the Gates. That's like old Swedish melodic death metal, like real, like foundational. But then, people who like Iron Maiden are going to be psyched on Amon Amarth too, because they're like, oh, these guys have like, a bit more of a rock and roll vibe. There's some up tempo songs. I only wear, if I'm wearing a heavy metal shirt, it's an Amon Amarth shirt. I get props from like random metalheads who are wearing everything from like Motionless in White to like Burzum shirts, like and people are just like, yeah, man, so I think they have a really broad range of appeal.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's super broad range, and I think that is why they're can pack these 4,000 or 5,000 seat venues, and depending on where they go. But yeah, that's just I still can't even believe that's just so amazing to see. Like that's a great thing for all metalheads, not just the Amon Amarth fans, just everybody. That's a win-win situation for everybody.
And
Nothing-
that is very, very true. Oh, my bad. Were you talking that?
No, you got it, Clint.
They do have that wide range of appeal to anybody, like when I wore mine, I'm the kind of metalhead that will wear, like different kind of metal shirts, different styles, stuff like that. Like one day but they do have a little bit of for everybody. And, at the time, they really were starting to get popular, I'm kind of glad now to see a lot more Norse stuff is getting more popular. And that's just, I think, even helping them even more. Like, the show Vikings, the newer God of War games.
Yeah.
Norse mythology is slowly, taking over mainstream, which is kind of cool because, whenever you think of mainstream mythology, it was always Greek mythology was number one. Like everybody knew Greek mythology. and slowly Scandinavian, Norwegian hair, is outbooting it, I would say now.
Yeah, and there's been some pretty cool media lately, Clint. Like the game Valheim came out. It was pretty awesome. Assassin's Creed Valhalla was really popular. And then I mentioned it to Jamie before the show, but if you guys haven't seen the trailer for The Northman, that's Edgar's new movie. It's like $100 million Viking
Looks good.
epic
Yeah.
that's coming out in April. Yeah, Dave, doesn't that look epic? I mean,
Looks
I
awesome.
literally watched that trailer like 15
Yeah, I
times
watched
back
it
to back.
a few times too. Looks really good.
Yeah.
I just smiled as soon as Clint started talking about movies. I was like, "Oh, this is Matt's chance to talk about that trailer." I couldn't believe it. That was perfect. Because you mentioned it before the show. Like you're like, "Have you watched that trailer, that Viking movie?" I'm like, "No, I haven't." Why is Johan in it? You're like, "No." I'm like, "Oh well." I thought Johan was in it because I thought that's why you brought it up, but you're
Sorry,
like, "No, he's not in it." But you're just like, "It's just Viking related."
Sorry, Jamie, we're shoehorning in as much Viking material as
Yeah,
we
yeah.
can into this.
That's funny. That's a good one. So I guess we'll lead that into Dave here. If you want to go up next.
Sure, man. Yeah. Yeah. What else could be said? Matt said it all. Yeah. I mean, we're all fans of Amarth, obviously, or else we wouldn't be here. As far as I'm concerned, they don't have a bad album. Every album is good. So it was hard to pick. It was a challenge to pick three for sure. I definitely do have a favorite. We'll get to that in a bit. But yeah, I'll start. I'll go on my third choice. It's already mentioned, Suture Rising. Yeah, love this album. What version do you have there, Jamie?
I just have a standard jewel case. Actually, I know they have deluxe versions of probably every CD they have, every album, but I just have a standard.
Yeah, this one's a deluxe one. It's got a DVD concert in with it as well.
Oh yeah, cool. Where's the concert in?
It's Bloodshed over Bonn, Germany, December 28th to 31st, 2008. Yeah, it's like a full concert. It's pretty cool. Anyways, yeah, Suture Rising. Love this album. I mean, Clint already mentioned this one. I found with this album, compared to the earlier ones, definitely more of a straightforward death metal vibe. Obviously, still had the melody. They all do. I found with this, the one that really this album that really drew me in was I find a lot of the songs are actually a little more slow tempo, a little more almost like a groove. Got more groove to this album. Definitely more groove, a heavy groove for sure. But yeah, compared to some of the earlier ones, it's a little more groovy. So yeah, my third pick, Suture Rising. Love it.
When you bring up the heavy groove, Dave, I think of the second song. The Taunt.
Yeah.
That song's amazing.
Yeah.
Like
Slays of Fear. That's one of my favorite tracks in here. Slays of Fear and Live Without Regrets. Those are my two favorites of this album. Nice. Yeah, great. I mean, the whole album's good, but yeah, I find the middle of the album, like those, three tracks around the middle of the album, like there's 3-4 tracks are all like just so groovy. They got like a really groove. It's all how I can describe it. It's a really decent groove. Yeah, it's pretty great album. Love the artwork too.
Yeah, this actually might be probably one of the best artworks. I don't know.
It is, yeah.
There's just a lot of stuff going on the cover, but it just looks so cool. It's like total guy shit.
Yeah.
It's also one of those covers that you can just sink into, and I start looking at the details and the guys at the bottom and Suture's belt and like all that. I'm like, yeah.
Definitely. And that kind of gives me for a Jamie, for a video you could do in the video next, in the future, top 3 or I'd have to say 5, top 5 favorite album artworks, definitely they would be up there.
Yeah, it would have to be broken down to like top favorite album artwork of the 80s, top favorite album artwork of the 90s, 2000s, or else it would just be like, that's just impossible. But yeah, definitely breaking down into each decade would be great.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That'd be a good idea. They definitely have some good artwork. All right. My second choice was already mentioned, The Avenger.
Ah, yes.
Yeah. Love that album.
Yeah.
I chose this one mainly because, well, around late 90s, early 2000s, I was huge into melodic death, especially European melodic death metal. So I quickly obviously gravitated towards these guys. And I'll explain that in a little bit there once I get to my next pick. Kind of an interesting story how I discovered these guys. Yeah, The Avenger, love this. I find with this album, definitely a lot faster than their newer albums. It's a little more aggressive, I found. And Johann's vocals, I found in the early stages,
Oh,
were a little more, definitely more like, I want to, well, he definitely has harsh vocals, obviously. His vocals are pretty vicious. But I find the early albums, he sounds the most vicious in the early albums, as far as I'm concerned. A little more
They
high pitch.
definitely,
What's that, Clint?
I was gonna say they definitely do sound like they're more guttural based.
They are, yeah, yeah, yeah. A little more brutal, I found in the beginning, but that was a style back then too, right? They obviously gravitated, they evolved as the albums went along, right? Yeah, Avenger, great album. All right,
yeah, I don't know what it like. Some of the even with the production mix, it almost like there is like a touch of black in there as well. I wouldn't say black metal, but like a touch of black, like with his. I think it is something to do with his vocals and the production, the
Yeah.
mix. It's just very dark and kind of blackish in a way.
Yeah.
And also Johann has one of those voices where when he's singing, it's almost like he's learned to sing to suit his own voice. Like he's one of these people when they talk like this anyway, so like his singing style on the last 6 albums suits that voice. Whereas in the early albums, you have a bit more of that brutal tone, a little bit harder, just a little bit like almost trying harder, which makes it sound more savage. I agree with you, Dave, definitely. And I sometimes the comprehensibility of his vocals now sort of throws off those early vocals, which were were more brutal. I agree, totally agree.
Yeah. Yeah. So this leads me into my first pick. So my first pick. So this is how I discovered this band was, as I already mentioned there, I was huge into like melodic death, a lot of European bands. One of my favorite, that's totally different band, another band, but I'll mention them. One of my all-time favorite death metal bands is Hypocrisy. Okay. I'm sure you guys are familiar with that band.
Love.
And who the vocalist is. So, and Jamie, I know I mentioned this a few times in some of the other shows we've done, that I choose bands a lot. I did it a lot in the past. I used to delve into new types of bands by who produced the band. Okay, so my first pick is One Cent from the Golden Hall. Love this album. Not only is this my favorite Amon Amarth album, this is probably one of my favorite melodic death metal albums of all time. Produced by Peter Tagrin. You guys all know who that is, right? And he also produced The Avenger as well. So that's actually how I discovered these guys, was by him, because I would search out what bands he produced, and I came across this, what's this, Amon Amarth band? Never heard of them before. I was big into Hypocrisy at the time and some other bands. And I checked them out. And nope, Clint there lost his phone there.
Yeah, I dropped it for a second. Am I back on or not?
You're good.
Yeah. Anyway, so I checked this album out, and lo and behold, it's quickly became one of my favorite albums of all time. Yeah, love this album. Like I mentioned, Johann's vocals, like his vocals are so ferocious on this album. It's like, yeah, very melodic. Ride for Vengeance, Victorious March, Amon Amarth, love those tracks. Oh man, well, it's, yeah. I don't know, not much else I can say about that album, but yeah, that's how I discovered the band, was by searching out And lo and behold, they became one of my favorite bands.
Dave, when you listen to Victorious March, they do it in English and then they do it in Swedish or German. I'm not sure what the other version is. Do you know what that other one is?
I thought it was German, but I might be mistaken.
I thought it was German too.
Yeah,
As well.
Yeah. Which one do you prefer?
I like the English one.
Okay. Yeah. I love the German one.
They're both good, but
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
I have it
interesting.
here, but oh, sorry. I have it here, but I don't know if Adara would try to pronounce it. It's like Sigischer Marsh.
Yeah.
Sigischer Marsh.
I think it's Sigreiker.
Sigischer Mark. Yeah, I can't speak.
but you get that on. That's on Versus the World, Jamie.
Yeah,
Spotify?
but actually, I was going to actually also say is I think Victorious March was one of the first Amon Amarth songs
Yeah.
I ever did
I had
hear.
the same version. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I
I
think
got the
that
same version.
Victorious March was one of the first songs I did hear because yeah, I would have downloaded it back in the day, and this would have came as a deluxe, and I think that was one of the first songs I probably did hear from Amon Amarth, and yeah, it's kind of hook, line, and sinker for me, just kind of a perfect kind of melodic.
Yeah, it's a great album. That CD was on constant rotation for probably about 2 or 3 years straight. That was like constant rotation. Awesome album.
Yeah, Dave, you certainly get the OG points of this podcast. I mean, you've been into Amon Amarth since their first album.
This
and
is the very first one I've heard.
And it's your favorite.
It's my favorite.
Yeah, that album is so heavy. I didn't know if it would come up tonight because it's got that sort of really unique sound of a band who's just discovered who they are.
Just starting out.
Yeah, and really heavy, but also like really good. And I love the cover. The cover for me is like kind of awesome.
It is. It's cool. It's actually one of my favorite covers.
Yeah,
it's plain. Not much going on, but it's cool.
There's something there. You're opening the doors of Valhalla.
You're right, in a keyhole or something.
Yeah, it's so cool.
Yeah. But anyways, those are my 3 picks.
Phenomenal. Which is your favorite cover?
Oh, cool. He's answered the question for me.
Of these 3,
Sure.
yeah, we'll go with of these 3. That one.
Nice.
That's my favorite.
Gangster.
Which one?
Golden Hall.
Yeah, Golden
Oh, yeah.
Hall. Yeah. Oh yeah, it's kind of hard to see there. Lights shining on it. Yep. There you go. Yeah, like Matt said, there's not much going on there, but it's opening the door to greatness. That's what that is. Yeah. Cool.
Those are really cool picks, man.
Yeah.
Awesome, great. I'm glad the Avenger came up because yeah, obviously there's some nostalgia because it is so older. But even though that wasn't the album that I discovered them with, so that still remained my favorite. It was probably my favorite once I did go back and listen to it. It's been my favorite for probably 20 years now. So it's going to be hard to bump. It's going to be really hard to bump that off. Maybe 20 years down the road, John's Viking might overtake it, but we're talking, it's going to take a long time for that to happen.
Jamie, it's sort of interesting though that like during our pre-show conversations, you were saying, I could see almost all of their albums being picked, by the broad range of metal fans that you're friends with, and it's like, from Dave going from the very first album, and then we've all had like a full range of picks right up until the second to newest album. I'm really looking forward to Jody's picks because, Amon Amarth's the kind of band where you can have 3 totally different picks. Like I don't think our picks overlap, do they, Dave?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, and yet we both love Amon Amarth, and the music still rips, and it's like this is so awesome,
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just kind of going along with how I was saying, like, they don't have a black album per se, or like a big hit album. So I don't know what is the fan favorite, what is the most popular one. I have no idea, and I think I was kind of like guessing with the show that we all would probably have different picks because they don't necessarily have a hit album. So it's just all up to our ears, sort of thing. Like we're not going by what's popular or what's cool. We're just going by what our actual personal favorites are.
Yeah.
Not,
I think Versus the World, Jamie, I have a lot of friends that are big into Amarth as well. And Versus the World was probably the album that gets brought up probably the most. So maybe that, yeah, it is a great album.
I find versus the world really interesting, Dave, because it feels like that's where their sound transitions.
Exactly.
It's like that's
Yeah.
where they move from Golden Hall, Avenger, Crusher.
Yes. Yeah.
Right in, kind of like versus the world is when they, you hear it in Thousand Years of Oppression. You listen to that song and you're like, oh, this is how they're going to sound
Yeah.
after this album.
Yeah.
And, I listen to the early songs in versus the world and I hear the Avenger.
Yeah.
But then I listen to Thousand Years of Oppression and suddenly I'm hearing With Odin on Our Side, like really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a hinge, that album.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, Versus the World still does have a bit of a raw production. Like I was saying, like when I listen to it, it just sounds like if there was like a gang of friends, like 20, 30, just out there in the wilderness surviving, and they're just frolicking around, like, out there killing stuff and, whatever, being Norsemen, Vikings. It just sounds like a gang of like 20, 30 guys just out in the woods, just living in the woods sort of thing, like from the woods and, killing and raping, pillaging sort of thing, right? But yeah, it's still raw versus the world for me. But I was watching a fan made YouTube video, and I came across one guy's channel where he showed versus the world as like an album that is like one of his least favorite albums in his collection, and he like showed that as from one of his least favorite Skipper albums sort of thing, and I was like, oh wow, geez, like. But he's clearly not the guy. Clearly that's not the type of guy to do this sort of show. But I kind of was like shocked. I was like offended that he showed that as like a bad album sort of thing. I'm like, what, you think that's bad? But every rocker metalhead has their own opinion. So I'm not gonna comment. I'm not gonna comment like nasty things to the guy or nothing. So if that's what he thinks, that's what he thinks. Whatever.
You know what though? Like if Versus the World came out today with modern artwork, it would be a crushing album. It would still be a ripper. People would still be psyched. And it's 20 years old this year. Like
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Album's awesome.
Yeah, great stuff. So we got last here. We got Jody in the corner waiting patiently here. So sorry to do that to you. You're last, but hey, sometimes you're up first, sometimes you're up last. So it's just the luck of the draw today. So thanks for holding up patiently, sitting in the corner patiently. You chimed in a few times here, so that's not too bad. But yeah, here's your chance. You're up last here. So yeah, take it away.
Well, when you first talked to me about doing this show, I was like, well, I know two right off the bat, which I'll pick. And then I'm like, the hard one for me is going to be deciding a third. So I kind of went through all of it. And basically, over the last couple of days, my third pick, I decided Versus the World.
Oh, cool. There we go. Right on cue. Versus the World talk.
Yeah. Well, this album like hits you right off the bat with Death and Fire, which is probably in 5 favorite Amon Amarth songs. That song's just freaking crushing right off the bat. And the rest of the album is kind of crushing until you get to Cross the Rainbow Bridge. It sort of lets off a little bit, and then it's like it sticks your foot right on your throat again, so you can't breathe. Just crushing. I love that constant heaviness of that album, with that little bit of a break. But yeah, we talked about this album so much, and like you say on this bonus version that I guess Siegreicher March, I freaking love that version.
Yeah, me too, Jody.
I like it better than the English. So that's my third pick.
And actually, kind of dare I say it, but it's like now kind of thinking back, but I don't even know if it's the right word, but I'd say this is actually Amon Amarth's probably, I don't even know if it's the proper term, but like most atmospheric album, like where there is some kind of like, not pre-intro stuff, but there is kind of some more like melodic atmospheric stuff going on. I don't know if atmospheric is the right word, but there is some more progressive atmospheric stuff happening on this album. I don't know if anyone else kind of feels like there is some longer songs. Like the longest songs they've ever done is on this album. Like I know there's some 5, 6, 7 minute songs. I think that Rainbow Bridge song that you mentioned is like a 7 minute song. So they actually they were trying to like do some progressive atmospheric stuff. Again, not like atmospheric in like a black metal way, but just like melodic, like catchy kind of progressive death metal.
Yeah.
And yet it's still super, super brutal. Jody, have you seen some of the live Death and Fire recordings? They're so cool.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that song up because like that song live, I used to have that song timed to a run at Whistler that if I hit play right as I dropped in on my bike, I'd shred down, and the first time he goes Death and Fire, I'd hit a pretty good gap over a road. So I was always like getting afraid as I would come up to this road, but I'm like, here it comes, and Death and Fire. I was like,
yeah. Like you're right up to the
perfect.
Jump. Yeah, that's so rad.
Actually, it's funny you mentioned that. Is Jody kind of connect with you on that? Is Jody kind of rides bikes, does the BMXing as well? I know you do mountain biking and Jody does more BMX track stuff, but you both would probably connect in that sort of way. You both connect with the bike thing.
It's all riding and it's all hitting the ground, Jamie.
Yeah. And the older we get, the more it hurts when we hit the ground.
Yep.
Yeah, so I thought my next pick was going to be my top pick in my head, but I kind of switched it today. A number of us talked about this one already. Twilight of the Thunder God.
Nice.
It's like I think I've got more nostalgia with that one than any of the Amon Amarth stuff. I just remember going to visit friends in Edmonton and we'd be rocking out in their vehicle in a parking lot. Just album. Another one of my top 5 favorite Amon Amarth songs. I'm probably going to butcher the wording of it because I'm not really up on my Norse pronunciation. Varjags and Mikkelgard.
Pretty good.
I love that song. I think I like I don't know how to describe it. Like it's sort of got a gallopy riff to it. That like dun-dun-dun. Yeah, just it's so cool to me. Like, and the whole album's kind of got that gallopy type riff vibe, and it's more, I think it's their most melodic of their death albums. To me, anyway.
That's definitely a good word to describe Amon Amarth in general. Gallopy sort of, right? Gallopy. Yeah. Melodic death metal, right? You're always like grooving in some sort of fashion, galloping.
Yeah.
Yeah, to me, that's their most groovy album. Yeah. I
had that one picked. I had that one picked first for my third. But I went with Suture over it. Those two are kind of close. They're close. I mean, they're all close. Let's face it.
Yeah, like when Jamie first mentioned doing the show, I in my head right off the bat, I thought, oh, that's probably going to be my number one, but then I switched it at the end.
Oh,
So to my number one, I don't actually have the album because this is like kind of a limited edition type copy that I got, but Suture Rising with the
oh, cool.
which it's in there. But yeah, that, and when you talked about album covers, that is my favorite all-time album cover of any band, not just my top 3 picks.
Fantastic.
I love that. My biggest regret was going to that tour at the Commodore Ballroom and not getting the gigantic flag of that cover.
Jody, you beat me to it by half a second. I was going to say they used to have like an 8-foot wide flag of that album cover. I wondered if you got it.
Yeah,
I think I've seen it on eBay.
Of course.
I'm planning to get one eventually. That I would like to put that as my door. Put it over my door. And I have my new place.
Jody, do you remember the Suture tour was a double set? So they played a double set, like a full 14 songs, and then another full set after that. Do you remember that?
Sure.
Yeah, it was like a 2.5 hour, 3 hour show.
Well,
Damn.
that's the reason I didn't get the flag, because I got to the show and I thought, well, I'll get a shirt, but I don't want to hold a flag to the whole show.
Yeah.
I can at least put the shirt on, and I'll get it after the show. When I came back, flags are gone.
Yeah, I went to that double set here in Vancouver. You were there, obviously.
Yeah.
You too, Jamie, right?
No.
Okay, yeah, that double set was at the Commodore. It was really super intense. And then the next night I went to the same double set in Seattle. And then drove home and was garbage the next day, like destroyed, like 2 nights, double set both nights, moshing and chainmail, ruined.
Yeah, you got sweat on wearing that the whole show in that chaos.
Dude, I remember at one point in the Commodore, I checked my heart rate and it was 180. I was like, I'm gonna have a heart attack. I gotta sit down.
Jeez.
Jody, I was going to ask, how many times have you seen him on Amarth? I know you go to a lot of concerts, so I'm sure your number is probably up there.
It's got to be 5 or 6.
Oh,
I
yeah.
was at the show that Matt mentioned earlier at the Croatian Cultural Center too.
Yeah, man, that one was amazing. A friend of mine was in just a fuzzy loincloth and a helmet.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, Jamie, I flew to Vegas to see them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, for the Deceiver album release. It was wicked.
Wow. Cool.
Yeah, really good.
Yeah, my seeing them was Sounds of the Underground when they were on that tour.
Sweet.
I can't remember what year. I want to say 2005 or 2006.
That
Dave-
sounds about right.
Yeah.
Dave, you've
Yeah.
been a fan of them for over 20 years. Have you? How many? Have you seen them live a bunch of times?
Never.
Yeah.
No. Seen lots of other bands. I've never seen them, unfortunately.
I'd probably say it's not his fault. It's probably just his location, Nova Scotia.
Yeah.
Nova Scotia gets nothing. I'm very sorry for you.
Yeah, we don't. Very few.
But- What's the closest city that's showing like big shows?
Halifax.
Halifax, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, I'm seeing Priest in Queenswyke in April, so I'm looking forward to that.
Nice.
That
Yeah.
reminds me, Queen's right. Jamie knows what I'm talking about.
All right, Queensrÿche. That's funny. That comes up too, right? Yeah, you tell that story. Queensrÿche came up. Yeah.
Yeah, I was talking about it this morning about Queen's right. My dog chewed up one of my Queen's right CDs today.
So where did you bury her?
Queen's right CD. The dog's sleeping on the bed now. She's pooped. If y'all can see her, or she's right here.
Yeah, the first time, so you guys have seen video, I'm sure, of everyone sitting down and rowing like they're in a Viking longship. I think the first time that happened was actually in Montreal. So that's kind of a little closer to you, a little closer to you there, Dave.
Yeah, I've seen a few shows in Montreal.
Nice.
Yeah, I travel a bit. I travel quite a bit for work. So I'm in the military. So
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, well.
I've been to Montreal a few times, seen a few shows there.
Yeah, man.
Oh,
I
you're
got-
in the military, Dave? Hell
Yep.
yeah.
Yep,
Hell yeah.
almost 30 years now.
Well,
Damn.
I was
Yeah,
going to say, Priest is going to Halifax in April.
yep.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, you knew it. Well, you obviously heard what happened to the
Yeah.
guitarist there, right? Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I was really supposed to see them in November, but then he had that heart thing there. I can't remember what state he was in. It happened when he was down the States, summers, when he had that aortic dissection there. That's pretty crazy. Pretty much almost died.
Yeah, it's weird to think that the youngest guy in the band is
I
having.
know, eh? The other guys are all 70 years old, and the guy that's 41 has the heart issue.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I had no idea they were going making a run through Canada, or well, I don't think they're
yeah.
making a run through Canada.
Yeah.
They're-
yeah, Halifax is the second last. I think Hamilton is the last city they go to.
Oh, cool.
But they got doing Halifax, and I got the email already, like, probably about a month ago, for the new dates here. April 7th, I think it is, and Queensryche this time. Originally they were with Sabaton. Sabaton was with them.
Oh.
Yeah, but yeah, looking forward to that. So.
I know I know Priest is definitely not coming out to Vancouver. I would have heard or
Yeah.
known about that. I know they're definitely not coming out to Vancouver this way. So yeah, it must be just an East Coast thing, or who knows.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely good for you.
Yeah.
Good on Priest and good for that side of Canada.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool, great stuff. Here we're running almost an hour and a half here, so not too bad, not too bad.
Hey, Jamie, some of the albums that didn't come up, I think we've mentioned everything except The Crusher, Fate of the Norns, and Berserker, right?
Yep.
Oh,
Yeah.
It's actually kind of. It's funny you did mention that. I am really shocked that Fate of the Norms. I always say Norms, even though it's Norns. But anyway, Fate of the Norns. I'm surprised that didn't come up, because if Amon Amarth did have a hit song, it's probably Pursuit of the Vikings.
Yeah. Pursuit of the Vikings, definitely a hit song.
So that is weird that that their one hit song per se didn't actually show up, really.
And also, I think that the newest album is really, really strong. Like, I think that if we did this in 2 years, we'd be kind of like, well, Berserker might be as good as Jomsviking, or Berserker might be, as good as Odin on our side. Like, I think Berserker's phenomenal. Like I said, it's super weird trying to pick your 3 favorite albums out of, like, a bunch of 10 out of 10s for me.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Oh, go ahead.
Actually, like I was saying, when I originally got into these guys, obviously I was big into like the melodic death at that time. I still am. I will admit, probably, I think it was when Versus the World came out, I actually kind of lost touch with Amon Amarth a little bit, because I was just into so many other bands. I still collected the albums. Like, I have all the albums, and probably I'd say, yeah, like when Twilight came out and Suture, I got really like more into them, but like back into them, I guess. And yeah, but I kind of lost touch with them there for a few years. But the Crusher, the first 3 albums for me were like top notch. The Crusher was actually going to be my 3rd pick, but I decided to throw in Suture there because I didn't want the first 3 to be my pick.
I could have used either Berserker Beta Norns or with Odin on our side is my third.
Yeah.
But I chose Versus the World this time. I've actually got those three written down. Like it was that close for me trying to.
Yeah.
Well, and actually, when we did bring up that pretty much every album did get shown in some sort of fashion before Jody had went. I was gonna say, I know Jody really loves Berserker, and Berserker might show up. I was gonna say that before he went, because I know, like, talking to him when the album did came out, that he actually really loved it. So I was actually thinking, hey, it has a chance of showing up on his top three. It really does.
Totally was close.
Well,
Yeah.
and Shield Wall is such a good metal song. It's so heavy, and the video is fantastic. I think it's their best video.
Yeah, for me, I was so in love with John's Viking that when it came out, I was like, oh, I like John's Viking better. But it's kind of unfair to kind of do that to a brand new album. Of course, you're gonna like the one that you've heard more better. But it was kind of a grower for me. Berserker. The more I listened to it, the more I got attuned to it. Things like that, which it happens to every album. The more you listen to it, the more you like it, sort of thing. So that was a grower for me. So now that's right on par with any other Amon Amarth album, basically Berserker for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny how some of the, like, they have good continuity of the Viking stories. You know, Jody mentioned Variags of Miklagard, which is like about the Vikings going to Constantinople. And then you look at Berserker, and then Berserker at Stamford Bridge is about Harold Hardrada, who brought them back from Constantinople. So it's, you know, like I love tying the narrative history through their albums. They're really conscious of that. And they really they keep it really tight. You know, the myths are all actually the myths, and the history is like well researched, well founded history. Like, I think one of the things that people like about Amon Amarth is that it's still metal, it's still heavy, but and even though it's all Viking, there's no bullshit. Like, it's all stuff that you can look up, that you can get into. You know, it's an entryway into the mythology and the history. It's not just music, you know. So anyway.
And I would assume, or I probably would imagine that, you know, Clint pays a lot of attention to the lyrics and things like that, because that's kind of he is a singer, so he probably one of the first things he does notice is lyrics and things like that.
Definitely. And, you know, I mean, you know, I write more kind of like stuff that I've been through in my life and stuff like that. But, you know, the lyrics are definitely really good. And, you know, they do pay attention to detail on everything. You know, I used to think, you know, when I was younger, I thought they were Norwegian. You know, I thought because they look like Norwegian, they look like Vikings. You know, they're actually they're from Sweden. But I always thought they were actually from Norway. How well, you know, they really do pull off the Norse.
Well, the Swedes burned down just as many villages, Clint.
Yeah.
What's your Jamie? Can I ask everyone what's their favorite song? Like your favorite Amon Amarth song?
That's pretty hard.
Yeah, too hard.
Just off the top of your head.
I'd say Death and Fire always is going to get me going, charged up regardless. I could probably hear that 20 times and I'm still going to be just as into it the 20th time.
Yeah.
And I know that's a live staple, like any concert that they play. I think Death and Fire's on all of them, I think. So
yeah.
I'd say Death and Fire, maybe just off the top of my head.
Nice. Yeah, mine's Free Will Sacrifice off the top of my head.
Nice. That's an awesome song.
Yeah.
Awesome.
My favorite.
Yeah. I don't know. It's still kind of, I still go back to 1 cent, man. It's either Roger Vengeance or 1 cent. Those are my those two songs. Like, they're close. Very, very close.
Yeah.
Yeah. I couldn't really, if I were to have to only choose one, probably 1 cent. That song is like amazing song. Yeah.
That's awesome. Jody, what about you?
So tough, but I'm almost thinking of it right now. I'm almost gonna say that Varyags and Miklagard.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't know. There's something about that song, just the whole,
It makes you feel like you're on a long ship with them.
just it it is so catchy to me.
Yeah, I can't pick. I really can't. I can't even think, on the top of my head which one. I just really can't do it. So, but all excellent choices, guys. All excellent, excellent choices.
Yep.
Well, now I need to go to an Amon Amarth show.
Yeah, I know I need that. I definitely need that in my life. Hopefully soon. Hopefully soon.
I have Berserker playing in the background just ever so slightly, and I just want to crank it.
Oh yeah, no, I can't even hear it. Must be very slight. But
Yeah, just enough that I can hear it.
I'd say that's almost on cue to raise our horns and be out of here. So yeah, I think any kind of last chiming in that we had to do, we probably did already, and I'd say we probably are at that point where we're probably wouldn't probably end the show at this point. We're gonna raise our horns and all that kind of good stuff, and maybe we'll say our goodbyes and get out of here. And thanks all of you guys for coming on doing the show. Thanks for anyone that does watch the show in the future, things like that. So Mosh, subscribe, and see you later. And raise your horns to the Norsemen.
Yeah.